Welcome to The Quad, the new board game geek show where four notorious characters from around the world of hobby gaming will meet to discuss game-related topics. Each one of us will argue, defend, or fight to have their chosen example be shown to be the best in the given topic of this week's show. I'm Stephen Bonacor, hobby game entrepreneur, game media personality, and game industry veteran. You can find me all over the internet, Facebook, Twitter, especially YouTube, as the Podfather of Gaming.
I'm Candice Harris from Board Game Geek. I am a media creator. You can find me in BGG News. I host a show called Cardboard Creations, as well as the BGG podcast. And you can find me on Twitter at Candydrome.
Hey, my name is Matthew Makak, and I am a content creator for the Dice Tower. You can find me on YouTube there. I am also the co-founder of a channel called Room 51, where we are on YouTube and Twitch.tv. We're also on all sorts of social medias, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, all at This Is Room 51.
And I'm Beth Heile. I am the product manager for the Board Game Geek store. You can find me at hashtag Beth_Heile or by browsing all the products at the Board Game Geek store, because that's me.
Perfect. And today we are going to discuss, drum roll please, Derek, trick-taking games. We are each going to tell you why our example is the best of these games, or our favorite in the genre, or what makes it special in the category. Beth, why don't you set the scene here and tell us what a trick-taking game is?
Trick-taking games originally started with card games, and I'm going to use all the terminology, assuming that you're going to be playing this with cards. I'm sure there are trick-taking games out there that don't involve cards, but we're going to pretend that for the majority of them, you are playing with cards. A person is going to play a card. That is called leading. And then everyone else following the rules of that specific game are going to play exactly one thing, one card. And that is called following. You'll often hear that called following suit, hearkening back to the original on a traditional 52 card deck. Again, based on the rules of the game, something's going to determine that someone has won this now pile of cards, and that's called winning a trick. So the pile of things that you make in the middle, everyone playing exactly one thing, is called the trick. And the person who wins it gets to take all of those things. And sometimes that's good, and sometimes that's bad. There are also super powered cards, which are called a trump card or trump suit. And these are going to overrule and interfere with someone's ability to win a trick because they are more powerful than your average card. So some games will have trump, some will not. Finally, there are some trick-taking games which will have what's called a shoot the moon mechanic, where you are doing so bad that if you manage to do outstandingly bad in every way, something good happens. So again, some games have that, some games don't. So the terminology that you're going to hear us using while we're talking about trick-taking games is leading, the person who plays that first card, following suit or following the people who play after that, whether or not there's trump, something that's super powered and might have its own rules, and then maybe is there a shoot the moon mechanic where you do so bad you actually end up flipping around and doing great instead.
Thank you very much, Beth. Very good explanation of trick-taking. So let's all take a turn now and talk about the game that we're bringing to the table here. And I'll start. I'm the old guy here, so I'm going a little old school, and I'm bringing Die Sieben Siegel. Originally published in 2003 by noted game designer Stefan Dura. Other names are Slough Off, Zing, Wizard Extreme, Seven Sigum, and my favorite, Kill Steven Seagal. I don't know if you guys have ever heard that, but my game group, and at least several others I know, have called this game Kill Steven Seagal the entire time. Publishers are Amigo, Asmodee, Eagle Griffin, Gigamic, Louder Pellet, Simply Fun, and others. It's been published almost continuously for like 20 years now. Mechanics are hand management, predictive bidding, as we're going to see very clearly, and of course, trick-taking. So, the overview of Die Sieben Siegel, and there are minor differences in the other named versions, but we're going to talk about this one in particular. The cards are numbered 1 to 15 in 5 colored suits, as I'm showing you there. Red, blue, yellow, green, and purple, and red is always trump. If someone leads a color, you must follow suit if you can, otherwise you can throw off any card and lose the trick, or you can trump the trick and possibly win. highest red trump card is going to win the trick. Otherwise, the highest card in the lead color will win. But this is an exact bidding game. So after all the cards are dealt, and of course, before the hand is started, not only do you predict the number of tricks you're going to take, you predict the color of the tricks that you're going to take. You do so by taking chips, colored chips from the center of the table. Oh, some of the things like this that I'm showing off here. And you take one chip for each trick in the color that you believe that you're going to take a trick. If you take a trick in that color, then you just toss it back into the center. If you take a trick in a color for which you didn't have a chip, then you take a black chip. Those are worth -3 points at the end of the hand. If you have any colored chips left at the end of the round, they're worth -2 points. If you have any white chips left at the end of the round, and these are wild card chips, you don't normally get these, but you only get them when a color that you wanted to take during the bidding, it isn't there anymore because everybody took those colors. If you have one of those, you can use them for any trick, but then they're going to be worth -4 if you don't use them. And finally, there's one other little piece of this game. One player per round may become the saboteur. Instead of bidding their hand, they take the saboteur token, who we call Steven Seagal himself right there, because we can. And the saboteur's role, oh, you also take 4 black chips as well when you do that. The saboteur's role is to feed unwanted tricks to the other players. The saboteur has to play normally by the rules, but will purposely play to get rid of their winning cards by sloughing them into other tricks, like ditching 15s and 14s into tricks of another color, for instance, when they can. When players take tricks that they didn't predict, the saboteur happily hands them one of the black 4 chips that they took in the beginning. The saboteur score is going to be at worst -4 points for the round, -1 for each black chip they started with. But if the saboteur feeds enough of those black chips, the saboteur can get 0 points for the round. Oh, and if it's not obvious, everybody starts the game at 0 points, and that's the highest score you can have in this game. All points earned thereafter are negative. So 0 is your best score, and it's hard to achieve. I love this game. I mean, to me, it combines the best of traditional trick taking and beautifully marries that with like a perfect bidding system. I mean, it's called perfect bidding because you literally bid not only on the number of tricks, but then every one of the tricks and the colors that you have to take. So to me, that marriage is just beautiful and elegant, perfect. And while all the games that are going to be mentioned today on the show are excellent games, D. Steven Seagal, or Kill Steven Seagal, is the best of them all. I rest my case.
Stephen, I have
Yes,
a quick
Beth.
question.
Yes, Beth.
Is this for 4 only, which is the traditional amount that a trick-taking game is, or there's severe flexibility in how many can play?
That's a brilliant question. Thank you. Thank you so much. 3 to 5 players can play the game, and it scales well because you actually remove cards so that everyone starts with the same number of cards in their hand, 10 cards per hand. So you remove cards as you reduce the number of players in the player count.
Now, I will admit, it's been a long time since I played this, and I pulled it out again this weekend in preparation for this show. And I will, of all the trick-taking games I've played, I will say this is definitely one of the harder ones. Maybe it's the emotional fact that the best you can do is 0, and it's just that point of mitigating failure. In our household, we call that the pack and stack problem. There's an old Mayfair game called Pack and Stack that was just who is the first one to the worst failure, and it was a little depressing. But I thought that what I found interesting, I mostly know it as Wizards Extreme, was that since the role of the saboteur, the sluffer, rotates around every once in a while, because you have such a completely different feel to a turn or to a round, that really livened things up, because then you just said, okay, I'm just gonna be a jerk for a round, let's go. Rather than trying to exactly predict and then feeling like a little failure or a huge failure. And I found that was an interesting dynamic with this game.
You really mess with people. When somebody takes the saboteur, now they're playing essentially counterintuitively to a trick-taking game. So you're really just trying to just force people to take tricks they don't want to take. And when they do that, they take the black chips, and all those black chips are -3 points, and you just you really screw up people. So that is an awesome part of the game.
So I've never played this game, but I read up on it. And it was funny, as I was reading, I was like, this game feels old. And I guess I was right. It is old.
Thank you,
Hey,
Matt.
I'm not, there's nothing wrong with that. But I felt like, as I was reading it, the only interesting part of the game was the saboteur. I feel like the only person I'd ever want to be as is the saboteur. Like, that seemed like the most fun. Everything else seemed kind of, I don't know, like, there was nothing bringing me into the game. Caveat, I'm not a huge trick-taking fan, actually. It's not like a big thing that I love or anything. Blowing minds. But yeah, I don't know. So when that game was brought out, I was just like, okay, so yes, there's a bidding and you're taking tricks and whatever. I really only want to play as the saboteur to like just mess with people. So that was my take. Sorry about it.
So thank you. Go ahead, Candice.
I also have never played it, but I did watch a video on Slough, and I was like, this sounds kind of interesting, but there are just a lot of trick-taking games out there, and there's some that I think, might be a little better. I'd be happy to try it sometime if you bring it to a convention, because I really enjoy trick-taking games and experimenting with like a bunch of different ones. And I like things where you can kind of like screw people over a little bit. But I don't know. I think there are just some better options out there.
Well, at the next convention, when I see all y'all, we're going to play this, and I'm going to pwn you in this game to show you how good it is and how a master player can manipulate the game in the way that they'd like. So I got you all next convention.
You know what I think is a nice point, a nice connection to make is that if people, I cut my teeth on playing queens and spades with a regular deck of cards all through high school and college. And I think if people have played a lot of spades, if that's something that you've played a lot in your family, maybe you're not in the board game hobbyist sphere, I think actually Wizards Extreme is a nice next step, because you can introduce people saying, oh, are you used to bidding on how many tricks you think you're going to win? Well, how about bidding the amount and the color/suit? I think that's a really nice bridge point. And then you can, once you get them hooked up, oh, that does sound interesting, you say, oh, and also one of you gets to really screw with stuff. And then they're in. I think it's also neat that because it's been published by so many different publishers, lots of different names, we've used all three of the names just in this conversation, that me personally, I tend to be very susceptible to art, to theme, and you can buy many versions of this game and tailor it to the one that clicks best with your brain visually. And all of them are the size of a deck of cards. So that's a pretty flexible. I'm not saying it's the best, Stephen. I'm saying it's excellent.
This is the one that works for me. I want to kill Steven Seagal or be him. All right. Why don't we move to the next game? And I believe, Candice, I think you're up next.
I think we should move to the next game. My pick for trick-taking games is The Crew. I mean, The Crew is a cooperative trick-taking game. There are two versions of The Crew. The original one is the Quest for Planet 9, came out in 2019. And then there's Mission Deep Sea, which I prefer, which came out in 2021. I do have the box here since we're doing a little show and tell. But it is designed by Thomas Singh, and it's published by Cosmos. And again, it's a cooperative trick-taking. Everybody just think about that for a while as you think about the games that you've picked today. A cooperative trick-taking game. The Crew is so good. I'm going to mostly be talking about the Mission Deep Sea version, because I think that's the one that I prefer. But I was also a big fan of the Quest for Planet 9. But in The Crew, it's 2 to 5 players, and we are all crewmates working together. And we are playing tricks through a series of missions. So this is one thing that's very unique about this game is you play missions. You have this whole logbook of different missions, and they progress in complexity, and pretty much you can play them, with the same group, just play through mission by mission, or you can play them standalone, just flip to page 20 and say, I'm going to play this mission today. And the way a mission works is, again, this is a trick-taking game. So you have a deck of cards. They range from 1 to 9 in 4 colors. And then there's also the Trump suit, which is in the Mission Deep Sea version. It is a submarine card. And you have 4 cards that range from 1 to 4. And they are the strongest cards in the deck. And what happens is you're going to deal out all the cards. Whoever has the 4 submarine card is going to be the captain for the round. You're going to find whatever mission you want to play. And each mission is going to have you play a certain amount of task cards. So, depending on the amount of players you're playing with, it kind of scales. And also which mission you're on, there's different varying levels of difficulty you can play. But generally, you're going to you're going to pull maybe 3 different task cards or something in a 4-player game. And these tasks are so awesome because there's a deck of 96 task cards, and they will give you challenges that your team, because we're working together, because it's a cooperative trick-taking game, you're going to be working together, and each player is going to be taking a task and trying to achieve that task. We all have to achieve our tasks for the round, for the mission, in order for us to be successful. Some of the examples of tasks could be, I will win the trick with the pink 5. I will win 0 tricks. I will win the first trick. I will win a trick that has all even numbers. There are all sorts of different tasks that you're kind of presented with. And so you'll play a hand of tricks, which is must follow. So if I lead with a blue, everybody else has to follow with a blue if you have it. But if you don't have it, you can play any card you want. And the way the trick resolves is the highest card of the lead suit wins, unless somebody played a submarine card, in which case, because it's the strongest, the highest submarine card would win. So you're playing, but you can't communicate much about what cards you have in your hands. But what the game does is it gives each player a communication token, which is really cool because once per round, you are able to signal to your teammates something, give them a little bit of data on your hand of cards, because we're all trying to work together here to be successful at our mission. So if I play down an 8 green and I put my communication token on the top of the card, I'm telling you that my 8 green is my highest green card that I have in my hand. Whereas if I put my communication token on the bottom of the card, I'm telling you this 8 green is my lowest value green card. And then if I put it in the middle, I'm saying, hey, this is my only green card. And so players are able to, communicate once per round with each other. And you're trying to make sure everybody achieves whatever objective they did without talking to each other about what's in your hand otherwise. And it is just so cool. I think this game, it's fun, it's challenging, and it's so unique. I feel like, of all the trick-taking games I've played, I've never had to work my brain the way I do when I play the crew and we're working together. And it's such an exciting feeling, makes my brain tingle. And I think the combination of it being cooperative with the variety of different tasks you're presented with and the different missions. I mean, both games have a whole thematic story to them that you can kind of lean into if you want to, and you can just play that whole campaign and feel like you're really on a mission, you're really working towards something. Or you could just, like I said, just play a standalone mission and, you're killing time in between games at a game night. or at the end of the night, you want something to close the night. It's just so awesome. So I think that The Crew is just like one of the best trick-taking games I've ever played. I think it's highly replayable, probably more than any other trick-taking game that's going to be discussed today. But to me, it's just like really fun, challenging, and I love that it's unique because there aren't many cooperative trick-taking games, and I think it does it so well. And it's also worth mentioning that Cosmos has another game coming out in 2023 called Inside Job, I believe, which is it's a semi-cooperative game. Like there's a trader situation, but it also has missions that you work through. So Cosmos is knocking it out of the park. Yeah, exactly. But yeah, so that is why I think The Crew, whichever version you prefer, is awesome.
The thing about The Crew is that you can't play The Crew once you've played Crew 2, Mission Deep Sea. Take The Crew and throw it out, because Mission Deep Sea is so much better than The Crew that it becomes obsolete.
Disagree.
Oh, it's so obsolete. Crew 2, Mission Deep Sea is excellent. I have to admit it. It's excellent.
Chef's kiss.
Love it. It is so different, being that cooperative trick taking, which never existed until they created the genre.
Right.
Oh, now see, I disagree. I like the original flavor Crew better because I like that when I do Mission 5, it's like rereading a favorite chapter from your book or watching 10 minutes of a movie that is your absolute favorite. You know what you're getting. I totally respect and I would happily play either one, but I like that you're in that logbook. I feel more connected to a story when it tells me this is how you're setting it up. I will say, for me, a flaw to both of them is that you feel very responsible if you are not in the trick-taking club, don't know the lingo, don't know how to read cues from other people. And I mean that by how they play, not necessarily like, someone who's obviously saying, please pick up on something. And you feel very responsible if as a team you don't win. The same problem in Hanabi. And I sometimes, Hanabi is so rough that like I gotta be in the right mood to play it. And I feel that a little bit with The Crew, not very much. But I have noticed people who don't play trick-taking games very much can feel inadequate, can feel a little intimidated, and then they feel responsible. So I would say that's not necessarily a deal breaker, but more just something to be aware of when you're pondering the shelves and you're deciding what you want to play.
See, I would argue that a lot of people prefer playing cooperatively because at least even if we make a little mistake here and there, we're all working at something together and it's not just like, oh, I whooped you in hearts, Beth. But I'm also, again, I lean with Bonacore in that Mission Deep Sea is much more exciting to me. I love the card-driven system with the task coming out. What did you think, Matthew?
Oh, I love both of them. I'm totally on the same wavelength with Candice here. I think that The Crew was fantastic. If you weren't going to talk about it, I was going to talk about it. So I love that the cooperative nature of the game. I will say on Beth's point that there is, I think, a little bit of an issue of we could tell who messed up. It's usually me, and
Yeah.
But at the same time, it can lead you to feeling as a group very clever. I love that. I love that they created like a story with it and that you could play it cooperatively. I love the whole, I find space and like the ocean synonymous almost, so in a way, which is weird. I think they're both just so unexplored. But anyway, off topic.
Yeah.
So I like the theming of the game, and I'm a sucker for themes. So yeah, this one is very good. This was very different and new, and it made me appreciate trick taking so much more when I played it.
Well said.
Yeah.
So
Should I
Matthew,
go
what game? Yeah, what did you pick?
Yeah.
Now I'm curious.
All right. So the game I picked, which does have a cooperative version, actually, but I'm not going to talk about that one. We're talking about Fox in the Forest. So this is the first time I had ever known a trick-taking game to come out that is solely for 2 players. That kind of blew my mind. I was like, wow, okay, only for 2 players. Let me check it out. And it was very interesting. So this game is you're playing cards. You're sort of in this like fairy tale setting. Um, the artwork, by the way, is beautiful. The artist is Jennifer L. Meyer and Keith Pishnery. I hope I said that correctly. Designed by Joshua Borgel, and then it's been published by Foxtrot Games and Renegade Games at first, and then it's gone on to other publishers as well. But this game's been around since 2017. I think it's still holding strong, and you're playing cards. The trump is called the decree. So the trump card is going to be different or the trump suit is going to be different every round, which I also like. I think that's really cool. And you're trying to win tricks, but sometimes not, because you don't want to get too greedy. This is where it comes in very cool for me, where there's sort of this tug of war when you're playing this game, because do I want to win a bunch of tricks, or do I want to maybe not win so many tricks? Because you could get a lot of points either way. But if you win too many tricks, you actually get 0 points, and you want more points. First one is 16 points wins the game. That's at least the short version. I think 35 points is the long version if you want to go for that. And on top of that, some of the cards have special abilities, which I love. I love that the cards themselves have special abilities. That is very cool to me. So I think that the theme actually does come through a little bit subtly through the cards themselves and those special abilities. And just calling the Trump suit the decree. I just love that. So that I really enjoy it. Like I said, 2-player game. Not many trick-taking games they'll have some sort of rendition on how to play it 2 players, but this one does it. When I first heard it, I was like, how do you play a trick-taking game with just 2 players, right? The crew tried it. They have some sort of variant for it, but I felt like it's not as good. This one does it really well, and it's quick. It's one of those ones that you could just pop it out, pop, pop, pop. It's in a little box. I unfortunately am not showing and telling. I'm just telling, no showing. I don't know. I don't have the game. But that is why I feel like this trick-taking game is fantastic and should if you like trick-taking games, this has got to be in your collection, I think. And then they do have the Fox in the Forest duet, which has the co-op version as well, which is also very good. But this is the one, baby.
Yeah, I had the Fox in the Forest, and I thought it was an excellent game, and I was just as excited as you because, yeah, it's so rare to find a 2-player trick-taking game. Since I've played Claim, I think, and I'm wondering if there's another one. But I also played Fox in the Forest Duet. I was excited about that when that came out. I didn't really latch into that one too much. And in the end, the Fox in the Forest I thought was fun, and I love that you're making a 2-player trick-taking game. I love the powers too. Like that's cool. Any trick-taking game that has powers on the cards that you can play with is really cool. But in the end, I did end up kind of passing it on to friends, and it was something that I just was like, I don't need to keep this as a forever game. But good pick.
This is not a criticism, but it felt a little war-like to me, which I think is inevitable. It's a person plays a card, a person plays a card. Like the trick is 2 cards. But because the theme was so strong, and because I could still say, oh, it's a 2-player trick-taking game. Like, yeah, it had a lot of charm for me. I think in the greater pool of trick-taking games, I'm with Candice. It didn't stay in our collection, but I was happy when it was here. And happy to pass it along and say, I think you would enjoy this, like legitimately, because it's so snappy and I think has the strongest connection that you actually feel like, oh, I got like a forest and some wizards and fairies and witches and I could see that also appealing to kids, south of the 10-year-old mark.
So yeah, the 2-player trick-taking thing is fantastic. That really is a very specific genre. So I like that part about this game a lot. I love the fact that when you score, you have to you want to get up to a certain number of tricks, but you don't want to go over that, and then you score 0. That's very cool, especially when it's 2 players. You can control it more, but not completely. But this game, you need to play it a bunch of times in a row, because I cannot remember what those cards do. I cannot, if I was going to play it, I've played it a bunch of times. I played it, I don't know, a dozen times. I will have to relearn all of those cards again, because they all have these weird powers on them, and that just makes me crazy. So this will never rise to one of my favorite trick-taking games. But for 2 players, it is really cool. I will agree, Matthew. Go ahead.
I'm sorry about it, but there's a reference card with all of the powers.
What are those things? We never had them back in my day.
Yeah. I know, with your killing Stephen and everything, whatever. But so yeah, no, there's a reference card, and it tells you on the card what they do. So you don't have to remember anything.
You have to remember. Good stuff.
No, I think this has some staying power. When you were saying, Beth, it's warlike. At first I felt that, but as I continued playing, because of the special powers, I felt like you could kind of mitigate a little bit, like what you're doing,
Yeah.
and everything. So, but I can also see folks like being done with the game. Like, okay, that was awesome, that was fun, and I'm moving on to other things. But I also agree with Candice that I like it a little bit better than Duet, but I find Duet to be a really calming time to play. Like I just want to chill at night, just like pop, pop, pop. But yeah,
Yep.
I don't know. I like it.
Well, it sounds like I'm going to jump in with my choice, which is probably the newest title out here, which is Cat in the Box, which I'm going to have a little pronunciation guide for this one. Was originally published in 2020 by publisher Ayatsurare Ninyukan, and then the designer is Muniyoki Yukochi. Needed that pronunciation guide. Most people are probably going to recognize the deluxe edition, which was published this year in 2022 by Bezier Games in collaboration with the original publisher. So you can also find it from them. The game is exactly the same. They just upped the components a little bit. So if you can get either version, they are the same game. Now, this game, I hesitate to call it a theme. It's more of a inspiration. The inspiration is the theory of Schrodinger's cat, which was a quantum mechanics theory proposed in a conversation between physicists Schrodinger and Einstein in the mid-1930s. If you want to know about that, go Google it. But the idea here is that if you don't know if the cat is alive or dead, and that in some ways it can be either alive or dead, or also alive and dead, in this game, your cards have no color at all. They have a number, but they have no color. So your cards are both perhaps a red and a yellow until you decide to choose one that they're going to be. How does that happen? When somebody leads, they have a little personal board here, and they're going to put their card next to that color to say, this is now not just a 5, this is a blue 5. And now no one else can play a blue 5, because in the pretend colored deck that doesn't exist but also does exist, the blue 5 has now been played, and there is only one blue 5 out there. So everyone else will have to play something else that is blue that is not a 5 if they can. There is a trump color in this. Red is always trump, so red is always going to beat any card that is not red, and a higher red is going to beat a lower red. And then what you're going to do is you're going to take this little chart here, which was done with cards in the original game, and they have this cool double-sided board in the deluxe edition. Is you're going to, once the trick is won, whoever won it, you're going to put a little chippy out here. So I would put it on the blue 5 to say no one else can choose the blue 5. So your choices are going to narrow more and more and more and more as the game goes on. Like in Spades or in Die Sieben Seagal, you are going to try and predict the amount of tricks that you're going to win. You don't have to do color. You just have to do amount. You either are going to try and win 1, 2, or 3. And because this game can be a little bit tricky, you'll notice that, and I just sent the card flying, but there's only 4 colors in this game. There's only 4 ways that I can use a number 5 card, except the deck has 5 of each number. So some number in each a version of every number is going to end up being colorless, useless, and unplayable. And when that happens, this is the only trick-taking game that I can think of where you can say, I can't play anything. The round is over. And it's called a paradox, to harken back to its quantum mechanics inspiration. And then the round instantly ends, and that person gets a bit hosed. So it's sort of an opposite shoot the moon. It's more like shoot yourself in the foot. So I find that actually happens more often than we actually finish the round where everyone's able to play out their card. Another feature that I think is somewhat of an interesting twist on a trick-taking game that I didn't happen to mention in my very quick review is that often in trick-taking games, you will exchange cards somehow. You might pass 2 to your neighbor. You might pass 2 to the person across from you. In this game, you will throw 1 away, and then there's 1 that doesn't get played. So you do have that tiny bit of wiggle room. It's kind of unusual in a trick-taking game that you don't play out every card in your hand. But because there ends up being unplayable cards in Cat in the Box, they needed just that little bit of wiggle room that if you make it to the final hand, you actually are choosing between 2 cards and 1 will never get played. And that's okay. That's the way it's supposed to be. And I do think that's kind of an interesting twist on the pass cards to your neighbor. It's a way to slough off things that you don't like, try and get a bigger collection of something to hopefully push yourself towards a particular strategy. So what do I really like about this game? I really like that it's for 3, 4, or 5 players. 5 is, a little bit unusual for trick-taking game. I like that flexibility. I like that this board where you lay out what cards you played also has 2 versions. One where everything's lined up and one where everything's offset. So that gives you a little bit of variance. And I also really like that it feels very sideways. I think in a different way than I think in any other trick-taking game. Thinking, do I want a lot of the same number? It's very common to think I want a lot of one color or one suit, but in this, you start thinking more on number because that's the only thing you have in front of your face. The color will evolve as the game goes on, and other people declare what they want the color to be, and those choices then are denied to you. I find that a very interesting twist. So even though this is a very new entry into the trick-taking dictionary of games, this one has come out tops for me. So lay it on me.
Okay, Beth, you know I love this game because I hit you up to ask you about the old version of the game after I had been introduced it online before everybody went nuts at Gen Con. So I have been
before it was a thing.
Yep. I'm a Cat in the Box hipster. For a while. I think it's such a unique, brilliant trick-taking game. I really love the fact that it also adds the area control element of where you're placing your tokens as you're saying, I'm playing a blue 5. You're trying to orthogonally make the biggest string of your pieces as possible so that you can, assuming you hit your bid, get those bonus points. And I think anything, so it takes it out of just like, we're just playing cards here trying to make our bid, but you're thinking about what cards do I want to play so I can like maximize my points on this area control thing.
Yes, which I didn't happen to mention, but yeah.
Yeah. But I think it's a brilliant game. I do wonder though, how much staying power it has, because right now I feel like a lot of people, like, we're all excited about it. It's this fresh thing, but I could kind of see at some point I'm going to be like, that's Cat in the Box. I don't know if it's going to be something that 10 years from now, I'm going to be like, this is such a banger, or if it's just like so unique, compared to anything right now that it's like really wowing me and other people and you. But that's one challenge I have with it is I don't know if it's going to be something that I'm always going to be as excited about as I am now. Bonacor?
Okay, lay it on me, Bonacor. Come on, let's go.
This game I have played, by the way, a lot recently, as well as both of you. And it is so clever. And actually, ridiculously marries the theme of quantum physics and Schrodinger's cat and this card game. And I like almost role play it as I'm playing it. I take the card and I say, I'm playing a blue 5. You can see, can't you, my good doctoral friends here? It's a blue 5, obviously, and I put it on the board there. It is so clever, and then with the added area control, which is what it is. You are now trying to get synergies between where you place your cards, which cards you have put on that center board to get orthogonal adjacencies to score the bonus points. Clever on top of clever on top of clever. But as Candice said, is this kind of game too clever for itself almost? Because it's going to be like this thing that like, oh, wow, oh my God, that's so kind of cool. And then like, we're going to be like, yeah, it's count the box. Okay, yeah, all right, throw that away. And let's get back to killing Steven Seagal. It's a much better game.
Yeah. Okay, Matt.
All right, Beth, get ready, because I've never played this game, but I did watch. I did watch videos on this game, and I read it, and I was so close to playing it over this past weekend. I'm so bad, but because I really wanted to do it. This game, really intrigued me by how different it was. Where like, oh, okay, does it have a color? You're assigning colors to the card and everything. My only thing was, and you could answer this for me because you've actually played it. I had a hard time wrapping my head around how you score. Was the scoring kind of convoluted to you, or I don't know?
Yeah, a lot of people struggle with that in that you are trying to, and I'll give the 30-second recap on this. You will get a point for every trick that you win. So winning tricks is a good thing. But if you get your bid, so if you predicted 1, 2, or 3 tricks won and you got exactly that amount that you predicted, you will also get bonus chips based on this quasi area control by getting your chips in adjacent pieces on this board. What trips up a lot of people is that you still, if you don't get your bid, and you got 1 trick and you thought you were gonna get 3, you just don't get the bonus points. You still get a point per trick. And I find that's usually what trips people up. Unless you paradoxed and you hose the whole game, in which case now you're toast and you won't get anything.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think a lot of people struggle with that.
Yeah, because that was my thing when I was looking at it, especially the adjacency rule. I was like, wait, what? I had to rewatch it a couple of times to understand that. But I did worry about the same thing that Bonacore and Candice were bringing up. I was like, is this just like the new hotness, and so people are freaking out over it, but we won't really hear of it a year or 2 from now? I'm not sure, because it does add some clever and different things to the trick-taking genre, but I don't think it's as explosive of a difference as something like The Crew has, that garners its staying power. But I could be totally wrong. I don't know.
I will say, and to critique my own choice, there are 2 critiques I have myself, which is I do find the font that Bezier had chosen, if it was them, I find a lot of people can mistake, and I was looking down a moment ago to try and figure out what number. There's in our play group, there's someone that when you read something, oh, it's the 1 and the 7 look like the reverse when they're upside down. I also find that this game I think absolutely requires a base foundation of having played at least 1 trick-taking game before, because it kind of really mucks with that system. Yes, I have taught this to a non-gamer. They were not happy for the first half of the game. And then they're like, okay, I got it now, but I don't want to do it again right now. Oh, I understand. So I don't think this is a good entryway game. I don't think this is a good game for non-gamers. So this is definitely a sequel entry to, maybe you don't have to like trick-taking games, but you at least had to have tried them, be a little bit familiar with the terminology to know that like, oh, I'm winning a trick. I think people also get a little confused that I'm placing the 4 and I have to put it by the green, and that means this is now green, and that takes a little practice to get used to. So it's not for the faint of heart.
There's definitely a learning curve to it, and I totally agree that you need to have some trick-taking experience before you delve into this one. But I was just thinking about it, from my perspective as someone who was playing it, earlier this year before it hit Gen Con with the reprint and everything, I've definitely cooled on it significantly. Like I think I still think it's a brilliant game. But I've also been fortunate enough to be friends with some people in the Portland gaming collective where they play a lot of trick-taking games. And I'm getting shown all sorts of crazy, awesome trick-taking games on a day-to-day basis. And it has definitely cooled a bit for me, but I can see it being something that cools down the line. Again, whereas something like The Crew, I think it always just gives you a kind of different feeling when you're playing with a different group of people and you're playing these different missions with different tasks. And it just I think it has a little more staying power because of that replay factor and that it's cooperative. But again, I really like Cat in the Box. So hopefully it doesn't cool off, but it has definitely cooled a little bit for me.
And Candice, you and I played this at PAX, now didn't we?
Yes, we did. Yes,
and
we did.
And I believe I beat you. No, I don't remember. I
won that game. I think I won that game. Check your score sheet, Bonacor.
Check your look in the score sheet.
Because it was your copy.
Cat in the Box gaslighting there. Woo!
Wow.
That's great.
Yeah, but that being said, it is a game that I'm happy to play anytime. I just taught it to some friends this past Friday night at a game night, and I'm always happy to play it, but I don't know if it's going to be my go-to pick, 6 months from now.
I'm going to teach this to a bridge player. I will report back.
I've never played bridge, so I don't know what that means. I don't know what reaction to have.
All right, so I think today we tackled the very difficult topic of trick-taking games. And frankly, there are a lot of really good ones out there. I hope you all agree, everyone watching us, that the choices made by the co-hosts were excellent and really represent a wide range of games in the genre. What do you think? Tell us in the comments for the show. Agree, disagree, say Bonnick was a big jerk. Let us know what you think. And in case you have forgotten, I'm Stephen Bonnick, the Podfather of Gaming.
I'm Candice Harris from Board Game Geek.
I'm Matthew Makak from Dice Tower and Room 51.
And I'm also Beth Heile. I'm Beth Heile, also from Board Game Geek.
And we hope to see you next time here on The Quad.
Things are rolling.
Let me hit my record.
All you.
Hold on. Sorry.
Way to be a tease,
Already, right?
Candice.
That's how I roll.